And yet another piece of evidence that the way we start our show is the right lead story every single night. From that far right-wing Australian Financial Review, they put out this report today that was a survey about the number one issue in the country for voters. And guess what it is? It ain't climate change, kids. It ain't about how many people can use which type of bathroom. Guess what? 73% of people say the highest ranked issue that the Australian government should focus on is cost of living. Nothing is in the 70s with it. Nothing is in the 60s. Then we go back to hospitals and healthcare. Then we go back to the economy. Then we go back to interest rates. Climate change, well, what? About half the number of those that talk about cost of living. In fact, that number goes even higher to about 81% for people between the ages of 35 and 54. So if you've got a mortgage, family, kids, all the rest of it, obviously that is your number one issue. Yet, how did our Prime Minister spend part of his weekend? Well, as you know, he spent it with the great Shaquille O'Neal. Now, I am not about to shit-can in any way, shape or form, hanging out with a ridiculously famous bloke who clearly likes Australia and played the Prime Minister's press office like a banjo because there was no plan for a media event on Saturday. Instead, it's like, hey, Shaq wants to hang out, let's have a photo. Great, fine, whatever. But the supposed backfilling of why this meeting took place is, of course, ridiculous.
Etc. And here he is. Hey, how you going? Good to see you.
Hello, Australia. Nice to see you.
Hello.
How are you? Nice to see you. I'm here in your country. Whatever you need from me. Congratulations, guys. And everyone knows Shaq loves Australia. I need that government clearance, too.
That'll be done. We want to engage with people who can connect with young people in particular, but with all sections of our society. Shaq has that record of, particularly when it comes to bringing people together of different backgrounds, which is consistent with our approach to a constitutionally recognised voice to Parliament.
Stop it. Now, the fact that they thought, Shaquille O'Neal, how do we find it? What about just, he's in town, I wanted to meet him, lovely bloke. I wanted him to encourage people to play basketball, get fit, fine, fair enough. But trying to pretend that there was some other reason behind it? Please. Now, we know that all Prime Ministers love a little bit of a bump from famous people. Politicians love to be seen with more popular people. It's basically like the human version of how Twitter works, which is if you can stand next to somebody more popular, maybe some of it will rub off on you. I mean, for goodness sake, Elvis Presley had photos with Richard Nixon, okay? Remember the lovely cringeworthy footage, and we desperately tried to find this today, of Kevin Rudd rushing to the hospital to congratulate Kate Blanchett on one of her kids. This is what happens, okay? But don't turn around and pretend that this bloke has some sort of a role in convincing Australians to change their constitution. So our mate, Senator Price, well, she ripped in very well because she just called BS on it. Let me see here, right? Desperate times call for desperate measures. If the PM and the Minister for Indigenous Australians think that Shaq's appearance with lifting people up who are marginalised is the answer to winning the yes vote, then it demonstrates just how clueless and out of touch they both are when it comes to Aboriginal Australians. Now, I know lots of people will talk about this, but believe it or not, myself, the Senator, and Lydia Thorpe are all on the same page here, which is, it's not a crime for him to meet Shaq. It's not a crime for him to take a photo with him. It's not a crime for the Australian Prime Minister to be featured with somebody who young people might go, oh, cool, Shaq. Geez, he's tall. Okay, fine, great. Lydia Thorpe, also on Twitter today. Oh, got to hold on to your hats here. I agree with her. The thought that a black man coming to our nation would be more respectful to First Nations people than and interfering in what is a controversial topic dividing our people, I'll advise, hope that you take the time to set it right, Shaq. We don't come to your country and interfere in your business. Well, of course, that's high-handed stuff, but still, please. But of course, the media have already declared that as we head to 100 days of the greatest Prime Ministership of all time, it is the greatest Prime Ministership of all time. This was paid for today by you on taxpayer internet, which says, have we hit peak elbow? And of course, over on Channel 9, it's less than 100 days into him being the Prime Minister, but they've already given him a second term.